Hi everybody, we're going to dive into another video, and this one is going to cover how to properly save and export files from CorelDRAW and Photoshop Elements. I'm going to share with you my personal routine, how I go about doing things as far as sending files to clients for approval, and how I always have backups for future purposes in case I have a returning client who needs additional work done. I always make sure that I have the original files correctly saved in the very beginning, even if they don't ask for them up front. So let's go through all of this. This is a logo design, and for files that have separate elements to it, this one has a text design and it also has a character. Normally I would go in here and I would select the character, right click it, and group it together so all of my layers are in one group. And if you ever want to undo this, you can go right click and then ungroup. And then I would select all of the layers in the text portion and group them just so they're organized nicely in the object manager. Then I would select all of them, the entire design, and I would save a copy of the entire design, and then I would come back and save a file of just the character by herself, and then come back and save just the text. I do this for two reasons. One is so that I can send the entire logo and the separate images to my client so she can use them in different projects that she might want, like Facebook covers, or maybe she wants to rearrange the size of the text and the character to fit into a different type of canvas, like business card versus website header. I like to give them versatility with what they buy. I do charge for my images, and I feel like they should be able to use them with more freedom than just giving them a logo like this and make them come back to me for edits. You can do it whatever you want. That's just my personal preference. So this is how I go about this. For I'll just do this single all together save so you can see how I go about saving files. I'm not going to go through all the separate ones, but you get the idea of how I prepare them. The other reason also it came back into my mind why I do the separates is that if I were to be hired for a business card design or something else and it had a specific purpose, outside of just the logo, I would want to be able to come into Photoshop Elements, open up the canvas that I was working with, and have the freedom to move these different elements around as I need them to separately, opposed to just together trying to fit them into a fixed space. There's obviously other things that you can do with this. I could be doing a profile badge or a biography image for a sidebar of a blog, and she may just want her character face there. So that comes in handy for me just as much as it does for my clients, having these saved as separate images as well as the one together. Okay, moving on. So to save, as long as you have all of your layers within this canvas border, you don't have to select them, but sometimes I have color palettes or reference photos or notes hanging around on the outside of my canvas, and those will save to the Corel file if I don't get rid of them. So what I always do is I select just the portion of the image that I want to save. Even if I have nothing in the sidebars, it's just a habit for me to just select what I want to save, and it automatically grabs those layers only. And then I will go to File, Save As, and save it as a CorelDRAW, and I always click the Selected Only, CorelDRAW file type, and of course name your file and put it in the appropriate folder. And then also File, Save As, a Selected Only PDF file. Now, if you notice, there is no save to PNG or JPG in this. That is a different way of doing that. This is just for the CorelDRAW and the PDF. Always save the two separates. The reason why I save everything to PDF is, aside from web use, is that the PDF saves as a perfect layered vector file. And that vector file can be opened in any other software that is a vector software program like Adobe Illustrator. And it will convert properly to an Adobe Illustrator file with no issues whatsoever. If someone who doesn't know how Corel jives with Adobe, they may ask specifically for you to export this file as an Adobe file right here. But I will tell you before you even try that you will run into problems if you use any gradients, transparencies, any fill effects whatsoever. Adobe Illustrator is not as advanced in their advanced tools as CorelDRAW is, and the only way that I have ever been able to give a client a file from Corel and be able to have everything intact the way that it should be is to provide them with the PDF file. That is why it's so important. The other thing is you can open the PDF in Corel and it will open just as a Corel file would. Normally it would open the same way as if you would open the Corel file itself. So that is a necessary step to be able to give the file to someone who possibly wants to edit it in the future using another software program, and obviously for web use. Okay, to save as a PNG or a JPG image file, you have to go to File and Export. And here you can export it to your PNG or your JPG or JPEG, which is the same thing. But these are the two that you would use for your image file exports. I personally don't do this step in Corel. I don't save my Corel file to an image file in this program, primarily because I find Adobe Illustrator to be much more user-friendly and a lot less confusing options that are available for you to choose if you were to follow through with this file export. Let's just show you an example. When this brings the export preview screen up, you'll see all these settings, and a lot of people kind of, guess, what should I do? What should I do? Over in Photoshop Elements, you don't have any of those options. It just saves it as it should be, and you don't have to worry about all this stuff. The other thing is that it saves exactly to the size that your canvas is. If you were to open it in Photoshop Elements to save it as an image file, you would place that image on a specified canvas that fits exactly what you need to deliver to your clients. That's why I prefer Photoshop. But if you have to do it this way, this is how you want to go about it. Export and keep those the same unless you need otherwise. And press OK. All right. So that is how we save to Corel and PNG. Excuse me, PDF. If you want to use an image software to save your images, like I always do, it could be this, it could be GIMP. I do highly recommend doing this step, but here is how I go about it. All right. So let's see, I have my little Christine saved, or I might import a different one, just depending on what's convenient. But I'll open up my Photoshop Elements, and if I'm giving a preview image to a client for approval, or to see if they need anything tweaked, I will do New, Blank File, and the size would be pixels. 600 by 600. Color mode is RGB. Background is transparent. Okay. This is how I deliver most of my preview images. If I'm working with a very large or a very wide header image, then I'll do a smaller size of that header image and it will be a rectangular shape. But usually for any kind of character design or anything that will fit nicely into a square, this is the size I use, and that is 600 by 600. And then what I will do is I will come into place and I'll grab the image that I'm working with. I will not grab the Corel file. I will grab the PDF file. Corel will not open in Adobe Photoshop Elements. So you will want in Cherry for right now. You'll see that it's a PDF just by this little Adobe Acrobat document icon. So that's helpful. Okay, when this comes up, it'll show you the preview of the image to make sure that that's the one you do in fact want. Press OK. And if everything looks good on the canvas, click this checkbox. If you want to make it smaller, you can grab the arrows from the corner and slide it in and out. Sometimes when you grab a corner, it will start acting wonky. You may see the image do this, even if you're doing it on the corner. And if that happens, don't let go of your mouse in the original place. It doesn't happen every time, but it does happen. Let's see if it will happen with this one. No. All right, mine's staying pretty uniform, kind of getting obscured. Hold down the shift. Oh, see, this is what it would do. If you hold down the shift, then it will lock it back into its original size. You don't want any kind of discrepancies as far as how it's, even if it's just a tiny bit. So, okay, let's settle on one of these. Okay, press all right. We've got Jessica in here. When it looks good, press your check. And then if it is a preview, I always go to place and grab my watermark. If I can remember where my watermark is. There we go. And my watermark is also a PDF. Everything I place into these canvases is always a PDF. And then once it's overlaid, check yes. Okay, then I will go to File, Save As. Okay. And I will save it here as a PNG. And then I will come back and do it again and save it as a JPG. If I save it as a JPG, it will automatically save it on a white background. See how it changes it to a white background? It's no longer a transparent background. Okay. I'm not going to press OK right now, but for the JPG, I always make sure that this quality is at the maximum of 12. Okay. All right. If I'm saving a file to deliver to a client, they've said, yeah, it's great, and they're ready for the final images. I will go to a blank file. And the size that I'll always send it to them in is inches and a width of 5. height of 5. Unless, again, unless it's a header or a specified size that they need as far as business cards, stuff like that. If it's just a general image file that they want to use for print or web, I'm usually always 5.5. And then again, I'll file, place my image. Let's grab one more. Let's bring in, okay, if it looks good, check mark. And then if it is a final image, I go and make sure that I save it as a Photoshop Elements document, as well as a PNG and a JPG, just so I have the backup. Especially if I come in here and I'm bringing a character in and I'm creating some kind of a document or a print project, like a Facebook cover, always save the Photoshop Elements file first and then go and save your image files. That way, if in case, a month down the road your client says, hey, can you make a quick text change to this Facebook cover for me, you'll have that original editable Photoshop file of that, so that way you don't have to rebuild the entire thing because you forgot to save the original file. So that is always something that I do, no matter what the project is or who the client is always save the Photoshop file. Okay, and I believe that is all you need to know in this go around. I will cover more about how to specifically save for resale and for clip art sets later on in your